One of the common features of MFL exams, be it A-level or GCSE, is the fact that each year in the reading exams and possibly in the writing exams, there's vocabulary that you might not have met before. In this little session, I hope to give you some ideas of how to break down those words and how to look at those words to try and work out what they could possibly mean or to get the sense of the word. To start with, just take a couple of minutes, pause the video here and just have a look at the words that are on this little diagram. Lots of them you probably won't have met before, especially in the GCSE exams, things such as empatia and esperanza. But take a minute and see how many you can actually figure out and work out for yourselves. What you'll have probably noticed is that you actually know more of these words than you know, and it's through looking at different strategies and through your ability to decode and to understand what words mean that you're able to do this. What I hope to do is just to make these kind of techniques a little bit more obvious to you throughout this presentation. So how can we deal with unknown vocabulary in Spanish in the reading, listening and writing exams? First things first, if you get a word, try and sound it out, say it aloud or say it in your head. Look for links to English, so what could it look like in English? Look at morphology. Morphology is quite a big word, but as it suggests morph, if you morph into something you change and it changes meaning. So how words or prefixes and suffixes can give meaning to that word, morph it into something new. Look for word families. Etymology, so where does the word actually come from? Synonyms and antonyms, so words that mean the same or words that mean the opposite in the case of antonym. Awareness of multiple meanings and also connect to the context. During the rest of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take each idea, each strategy and pull it apart to see what it actually looks like and how to go about applying it. So the first thing I would do if I got a word and I wasn't sure what it means is that I would read it aloud or say it aloud in my head and try and see if it sounds like anything in English. So if we take the first one, cualidad. Cualidad, you've got that cual, and we'll see that in quality as well, almost. Slightly different vowel sound, but it's pretty much the same word, and that's where you get quality or attribute from. Obviously you've got qua, and in English we spell it with QU. It gives us the same sound, but it's used with different letters. Be aware of that, and that's why it's always useful to say the word aloud. The second one, fisioterapeuta. Again, it sounds like physiotherapist, more or less. And this last one, at the beginning, you've got a diphthong there. A diphthong is two vowels that you pronounce together. Now in Spanish, you don't say them separately, you pronounce them together most of the time. So instead of getting oeste, you get oeste. By pronouncing that O and E together, you get we. That's the natural sound that your mouth gives you, which sounds exactly like west. Sometimes you don't even need to say the sound aloud in your head. Sometimes the root of the word or a lot of the word looks exactly the same as the English. So if we take these ones for instance, comentario, you've got comentar there. And comentario, we know it's a noun, commentary or comment. Dentista, nice and simple. Sounds, you've even got the word dentist in there for you. Policía, nice and easy. Cantidad, quantity. Autobús, avenida. Biblia, competencia, organización. So even these are a lot easier to see within the words. You don't necessarily need to sound these ones out. Sometimes, however, words are not as easy to fathom out, and this is where you have to look at something that's called morphology. Now, the reason why it's called morphology is because infixes, prefixes, suffixes can often alter the meaning of a word. And it's basically about what you can see inside of the word and how it adds to the meaning of an unknown word. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. Prefixes and suffixes are really, really useful in Spanish because they add an element of meaning to a word. I'll give you an example. If we've got igual, so equal, if I add before it the prefix des, I now know rather than saying equal, I'm saying unequal, something that's not equal. So this is how that prefix, that des, adds the meaning to that original word igual. And this is an example of morphology. Morphology because this prefix is morphing or changing the word and its meaning, and the sense of meaning. So some really, really useful things for you to know. These common prefixes, and you'll have seen them before. Mal, bad, malísimo, so bad. Ben, good. Des, un. Dis, not. Pre, before. So, predecir, to predict. Con, together or with. A great example of con is this verb here, See if you can work out what it means. If you split it up morphologically, you've got the verb tener, to have, and you've got con, with. Put them together, you get to contain. And if you think about it, if something contains something, it's got that product within it, inside of it. Com, again, together or with. Ex, out of, think of exit. Inter, inside or among. Re, again, sobre, over. Sub, under, contra, against. Uni, one or whole, so think of único, only child. Hijo único. And equi, equal. They usually add or change the meaning, whether it's positive, negative, or give you some idea about the location, within, inside, etc. Suffixes often give us a clue to what type of a word it is. So is it a noun, adjective, verb? Here's a few examples. So er, and ir. If a word ends in those, we know it's more than likely going to be a verb, and more specifically an infinitive. So from just the category of verbs, I know it's an infinitive. So rather than being I eat, I know it's going to be to eat. Ista is associated with occupation, and is also associated with someone or something. So think of futbolista, nice example for that. Futbolista, footballer. It's the occupation, it's related to somebody or something. Ero and era are also to do with occupations as well. And they usually come from a noun, peluquero, hairdresser. But it's also to do with, it can be a fruit tree as well, such as limonero, a lemon tree. Ario, area often indicate profession, and they can also indicate a place. So a good example of ario and area is secretario, a secretary. But then you've also got armario, or the place where you put your clothes, the wardrobe. Dor and dora are occupations, and they can also be adjectives that have a specific quality. So I'll give you an example of one of those adjectives, habladora. Ella es muy habladora. She's really, really talkative. That's a quality. Ante often indicates an adjective with ing, such as agonizante, the agonizing. Al relates to adjectives most of the time and related to something, such as comunal. Es un lugar comunal. It's a place that belongs to the community, so it pertains to them. Ado and ido are interesting. Ado and ido, a lot of the time, you couple with haber to form the perfect tense. For instance, he comido, I have eaten. However, if you don't have that perfect tense, sometimes you can be looking at an adjective. The next one, eria. We said earlier on that ero and era can often indicate a profession. So if we take peluquero, if I chop the O off peluquero, I get peluquer, and if I stick ia on the end of it, peluqueria, I get the name of the shop where that person works, peluqueria, the hairdressers. Mente is a really, really useful word, and it often indicates an adverb, and often those end in ly, such as rapidamente, quickly. CION, SION, XION, anything that ends in CION often ends in TION in English, SION and XION the same in English. So here's some examples for you. Have a go, see if you can work out what they mean. So the first one, compartir. Partir, we've got part, so it gives this idea of dividing something up. And we said that that prefix com means with. So if you divide up with something with somebody, you are sharing it. And not just that, we know that we've got ir on the end of it, so it's an infinitive. So it's got to be to share. Sublevar. Sublevar is really interesting. Levar, to get up, to levitate. And sublevar, that's sub, from underneath. So what you get is you get to uprise or to revolt. This des gives me the idea of to something. And I've got the verb hacer, to do. Run them together, you get to undo. Mal oliente. Oliente you might not have heard of before. Oliente relates to the verb oler, to smell. So oliente is smell. Mal oliente is like smelly, as an adjective. Decir, to say. And this contra as a prefix, against. Against somebody, you get to contradict. Now let's have a look at these suffixes. So we've got rapidamente, we've got that rapida, or rapido. Rapida is fast. Mente, we know, gives you ly. So you get fastly, or, probably better in English, quickly. Pescaderia. Now we said that area pertains to a place or a shop. Pescad comes from pescado, the fish shop or the fishmongers. Ista, we said, relates to a job and relates to a certain person. And we've got periodista. I know that periódico is a newspaper. Think of a periodical, the posh word for newspaper in English. Periodista is the person that writes the newspaper, therefore is a journalist. Ista, again, we said, pertains to a job or a person. And we've got the word izquierdista, so it's somebody of the left. So these are like left-wing supporters. Prepagado, we've already discussed, prepaid. So that's how morphology can help you unpick what words mean. Word families are really useful because once you start thinking about words and word families, you can almost start to predict what words are going to be. You can almost start to work it out. If we take the case of pescado, we know that means fish and it's a noun. This ado that we've seen before often indicates an adjective, but what it's telling me in this case, because it's a noun, it's telling me that it's got something to do with an er verb. So if I put pescar and change that to an er, I actually get the verb to fish. And if I get pesquero, is the fishing, it's the adjective. The person who does the pescar is the pescador. And the place where you sell fish, because we know our shops usually end in area, pescaderia. So word families are really, really useful and really, really a good way of building up your vocabulary. And it's about thinking of what the actual root is and what does that end in, again, like morphology, tell you about that word. The next strategy I want to discuss is etymology, and etymology is something that I love, and it's all to do with the history of language and where words come from. A great example is the word izquierda in Spanish. Now, what happened was, Spanish comes from Latin, and the Latin word for left was sinistra, which meant left or left hand. Now, what happened was, people believed that the devil lived on your left-hand shoulder. So people didn't want to say the devil's name because they believed it was unlucky and would bring them bad fortune. So what a lot of languages did, including Spanish and French, was they got rid of the Latin derivative, so what it would have ended up being, and they replaced it. They borrowed a different word. Now what the Spanish did was they borrowed the Basque word, izquierda, and that's why you've got izquierda, not siniestro. Knowing these stories, know where they come from, can help you to remember what words mean. The next thing is always beware of synonyms and antonyms. So if you ever get given a word, always think of what is the opposite of that word. So alegre, you could have serio. Optimista, you could have pesimista. Those would be antonyms. The synonyms, what does that mean? The same thing. So different ways of saying the same idea. So alegre could be optimista. Serio could be pesimista. Last thing to use to help you work out the meaning of words that you're not sure of, such as madrina, is to look at the context. Now this is taken from Requiem por un campesino español. And it says, la madrina repetía que durante el bautismo, baptism, so we know where we're at with the baptism, so probably in a church. El niño había sacado la lengua para recoger la sal, y de eso deducía que tendría gracia y atractivo con las mujeres. So if we're at a baptism, madrina has got that root of madre, which gives me the word of mother. So who else could be there that is almost like a mother, but isn't actual madre? So madrina, you actually get mother, godmother. That would be my guess. If I were in the exam and I didn't know that, godmother. It's somebody who else is going to be at an actual baptism on the altar with the mum, and we know that madrina isn't the word for mum, and madrina is actually the word godmother. So to conclude, here are my steps of things that I would try out. Sound out your word, such as cualidad. Look at the word as well. Some words are a lot more obviously related to the English, such as comentario. Look at the morphology, split that word down. What can you see inside it? Decir, to say, contra, against. To say against, to contradict. Look for word families and get in the habit of asking for the related noun, get in the habit of asking for the related infinitive. This is going to help you expand your vocabulary. Contradecir, una contradicción, the noun. Look at etymology as well. Don't be afraid to question where words come from. Izquierda is borrowed from Basque. Synonyms and antonyms. Make a list of these. If you're given the word for the left-hand side, why are you not going out your way to find out what the word for the right-hand side is? And you can learn it as a pair. Izquierda, derecha, optimista, pesimista. Be aware of multiple meanings as well, such as tienda. Tienda can mean shop, but it can also mean tent, and you've got to be aware of those two contexts and the different uses of it. And finally, look at the context. Think of where you're at. Think of the different things that are going on to help you work out what a word might mean.